This is the Dangerous Grounds Network with the 3 Percenter Morning Show. Patriot Pride OTR. Patriot Heart Radio. The Compound. All American Radio. The #1 online radio network. 100% true American. Let's get dangerous.
Folks, thank you for joining me on Patriot Heart Radio. I am your host, veteran, and author, Doc Collins. You listen to Patriot Heart Radio on the Dangerous Grounds Network, and this is week 4 of getting into the groundwork, laying the groundwork for 1300 Hours, the upcoming novel of a 5-book series set to hit bookshelves this October. I'm excited to share this with you. Folks, thank you so much for plugging in. If you're following on Facebook Live, you can find me at Doc Collins. You can find me on Twitter at Real.Collins. And we'll keep you up on the launch and everything coming down the line. I'd like to give a nod to a few of the fantastic contributors to this space, specifically Heroes Media Group. Heroes Media Group is run by a fantastic outfit on the left coast, and I got to speak with their podcast team this last week. I can't wait to share that with you. You can find them on Instagram at Heroes Media GRP, or you can find them online at Heroes Media Group, all spelled out, .com. Another quick nod to Vinny Rock Podcast, Vincent.Rocco.Vargas on Instagram. You may know him from Art 15 Clothing and Range 15 fame, also on the upcoming Mayans series, spinoff from SOA. If you're a fan, if you're not a fan, you will be. Plug into his Vinny Rock Podcast on iTunes. Click the link on his Instagram page. It'll take you right there. It's a fantastic program. Love that guy. So part of Patriot Heart Radio is me as an author sharing with you, the listeners, and hopefully readers, just exactly what goes on behind the scenes, and we take a closer look in depth, chapter by chapter. This week I'll be reading chapter 4 of 1300 Hours, but we're going to take a quick look at last week's chapter 3. That is where our male protagonist Dalton begins paying a lot more extra special attention to Ava. Ava's also Captain Stenberg in our story. I identify several Richmond pillars, businesses, and real people. So I'm often asked, is this your life? Is this someone else's life? Is it all fiction? And the answer is yes and no. As the author, I am able to take artistic liberties with whatever I choose. However, I've chosen to keep the story grounded in truth and use real pillars and landmarks and businesses, people that influence the main characters that are fictitiously drawn out for you to enjoy. So we've got pillars like George West End Barbershop that I love. He and his crew are just tremendous artists and entrepreneurs, some of the best community supporters that you could hope to find in any big city like Richmond. We mentioned VCU campus, Virginia Commonwealth University, Ruth and Ollie as the premier shop for any interior design, furniture. All of that is outfitted out of Ruth and Ollie by Mike and Kat Liebschwager, that are phenomenal humans. They're just wonderful people, and they're introduced to us as a voice to Dalton and as a major influence on his late wife. They have a beautiful relationship that's fleshed out as the story unfolds. Also, down the street on Carey Street, we have Cancan Brasserie, a beautiful French bistro that is, it's just an experience. It's not just lunch or brunch. It's an experience. Mentioned Alchemy Coffee, which is a tremendous little shop. Their staff is top notch. They've always got the best hands on deck. So I love being able to share the city that I fell in love with years ago with my readers, and using the backdrop that's so beautiful of Richmond to tell the story in. Captain Stenberg is described a little bit more. We get to see even more of the wear of war on her person. It mentioned in chapter 3 the scarring of her cheeks and how she once considered herself pretty, but her self-image had been damaged by the wares of the environment that she was exposed to. And I think that we can relate to that. Some of us, we can go in public looking as civilian as the person to our left or right. And when we engage in conversation, it's not too difficult for people to assume that we were once in uniform, even if we're all bearded out or our hair's long, or whatever indicators we've chosen to take on to shroud that identity, perhaps. We discover her love for baking and how she serves her fellow workers in the MCV hospital space. And we also see how she has such a difficulty asking for Dalton's help. And so as we go into chapter 4, we will uncover just what type of help he's able to provide for her. And we'll look a little bit closer as they get a little bit closer, the two of them. Before that, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back. You're listening to Patriot Heart Radio, and I'm your author and host, Doc Collins.
This is Sam from Madison Rising, and you're listening to Dangerous Grounds Network.
Branded Warriors, Inc., the original tattoo therapy program in America. Big Country and his band of warriors will take care of all America's heroes, with one drop of ink at a time. Go to bwitattoos.org to fill out your application and send it to bwitattoos@yahoo.com. Then the power of the ink and BWI will heal your mind.
Black Rose Tattoo Shop. Veteran Rand and Branded Warriors preferred tattoo shop. BlackRoseTattoo.com. All your tattoo needs.
This is Rio of Madison Rising, and you're listening to Dangerous Grounds Network. Hey, you want a freedom boner or what? Listen now.
What's up? This is AJ from Madison Rising, and you're listening to Dangerous Grounds Network. And we're going to put a little bit of freedom all up in you.
That's right. My goodness.
I turn my own head, don't need nobody's help, zipping in my own dress, pay my own tab with my own cash, unattached. Sometimes the word alone sounds like a sad song, but why's it gotta be? Cause what I really need is a reset and a deep breath. Yeah, I think it's time to take a heartbreak out date, solo on a Saturday night, going out without a plus one. I'm done falling over pickup lines. I'm single for the summer, I won't rebound. One lover to another, or be tied down till I'm sleeping like a queen in the California king I'm in. I think it's time to take a heartbreak. I think it's time to take a heartbreak. It's just a little phase, give me a little space. You might see through it, but I'm putting on a poker face. Giving love a rest between my ex and my next. I think it's time to take a heartbreak out date, solo on a Saturday night, going out without a plus one. I'm done falling over pickup lines. I'm single for the summer, I won't rebound. One lover to another, or be tied down till I'm sleeping like a queen in the California king I'm in. I think it's time to take a heartbreak
folks, that was Heartbreak by Lady Antebellum. You can pick that up on the iTunes store or in Cracker Barrel restaurants. That's where I discovered that one. You're listening to Patriot Heart Radio, and I'm your host and author, veteran Doc Collins. We're reading Chapter 4 of 1300 Hours. After several moments, and Dalton checking and rechecking his text message to be certain of the address, Ava answered the door in half of her uniform. His naivety showed through once again when he searched on his phone what 1400 hours meant. Why couldn't she just say between 10 and 2? Her trousers, fitting her trim waist just so, the tan tee half untucked, reminded him that she was also actively serving in the army. The wild patterned pink and highlighter yellow socks seemed to suit her personality. He smirked a bit when he noticed them, but caught himself looking stupidly at her as she pulled her hair up in a band like one of the CrossFit co-eds would wear. She said she'd just gotten back from Fort Lee and had to change quickly. He secured the storm door in the open position as she disappeared down the hallway, still talking. There was something about the movers having just called to say they were looking for where to turn onto her street. Pausing briefly, the memory of his late wife making a habit of the same behavior made him miss what he always found reason to protest before. He helped himself to one of the onion bagels that he found in a bag tossed on the counter next to a carton of coffee from Urban Farmhouse. She must have overheard him talking about his condo being upstairs from one. This one came from the one down East Carey Street. He'd fallen in love with that location from the moment he first opened that enormous farmhouse-style door. It only made sense for her to find a place closer to the hospital since she was there more than the army installation. Seconds later, she reemerged looking more like the Ava he was used to seeing at the clinic, but only in shorts, a sports bra, and a tank top, rather than the long-sleeved athletic running tops from various marathons and 10Ks she'd run from across the globe. She had sheets of plastic laid across sections of the foyer and hardwood flooring of the dining area. He'd forgotten his manners and tossed the half-eaten bagel back into the bag of others when he noticed her struggling. A nod of her head told Dalton to grab the opposite end of the sofa to move it just further against the far wall. He noted the house trance music playing from a speaker in the kitchen, something like a Depeche Mode remix. Out of nowhere, 4 men in matching green t-shirts, stained with the same big gulp and potato chip grease, appeared in the foyer. Their dirty boots deposited a minor trail of dried mud in the doorway. The first of the buffoons, unlatching the screen door from the open position Dalton just carefully adjusted to ensure the most manageable entry with his sizable body. Even through the flash of visible anxiety over their clumsy calamity, her gracious demeanor won them over. Her charm even managed to evoke a vain attempt to somehow brush their hands clean on their clothes where they stood. The spokesperson even took off his sweaty hat, nervously attempting to show some manner of respect while matting down the nest of unkempt hair. She then proceeded to tell them exactly what she wanted and how she wanted the items brought into the hallway. After a moment of computing the direction he'd been given, he mumbled some semblance of comprehension and began shouting to his crew. Dalton grinned as he watched the army captain diplomatically ordering the man that easily weighed as much as 3 of her on how to do his job. The feat of unloading the truck of her treasures into the house took less than 45 minutes. The workers operated smoothly, shouting bits and pieces of the instructions each of them remembered. None of them wanted to shoulder the responsibility for making Miss Ava unhappy with their efforts. Zena stayed clear of the commotion. Even she appeared to roll her eyes the way the men gathered around her person like puppies, waiting for a treat, and their job was complete. She sent them away with the rest of the uneaten bagels and box of room-temperature coffee as parting gifts. Ava wasn't much one to open up and tell stories. She offered praise, ask an insightful question, and listen. But the flood of memories and sentimental anecdotes that traveled the world with her familial antiquities were too much for her to keep mum about. Dalton listened with intention and delight, and she wove a tapestry that helped him understand who she really was. Not the woman in uniform that had been bathed in countless others' blood in an effort to save lives, but her true self. Like many other service women and men he'd met, she seemed to keep her true self packed away with antiques and memories of a life lived before it was signed away. She shared about her grandparents in Norway, having started a farm from scratch, from land her grandfather, her great-grandfather, had won on a wager concerning an outcome in local politics. The scraps from the house he built with his bare hands had been salvaged to craft the bench built by his brother, that she displayed by the front door. The fine china they unpacked had been in her family for generations, and she had to rescue it from her mother when she tried donating it to the local shelter. A few heavy pieces, like the end table and chest of drawers, sparked a conversation of how things just don't seem to be built to last much anymore. They expanded on the symbolism between those items and how so much seems to be simply disposable these days, up to and including people, until the long pauses caused each to realize they were both in murky waters. Ava noticed that the playlist had long ended, making for an actual silence that became deafening. Even Xena had grown weary of listening to their exchange and was asleep under the bench, situated by the door. Dalton pantomimed glancing at his watch to indicate he figured he had been all the help he could be. He had errands to tackle of his own. Her gratitude was repeated all the way until his car door was shut, and she suddenly realized she was standing out in front of her house, waving goodbye to him like it was an old friend. She was turning to retreat inside when a voice called to her from across the street. It was her 50-something-year-old gay neighbor, Patrick, watering his flowers. "You know how to pick 'em, sugar. I was beginning to wonder if you were more gay than I am." He spoke like a southern belle, but with a posh eloquence of an art dealer in London. "Nice try, Patrick. He's just my physical therapist helping me move some furniture." "Mm-hmm. Well, I've got some furniture that needs moving too, if that's the story you're sticking to." "Really, Patrick, that's..." "Oh, I know who that is. I've known Mr. Baseball for years." "Well, not known him, but you know what I mean. Goodness, he's, ever since his poor wife died of cancer a couple of years ago back, he's been keeping up appearances, but you can tell. He's just a sad little bat boy." "His wife died of cancer?" "Yes. Don't you do any research on men before you invite them over to get all sweaty? It's not what you..." "Have a good afternoon, Patrick." "Bye, sweetie." She slowly made her way inside, locking the deadbolt as if to keep that fresh-cut truth shut outside. She could feel her Catholic raising, bubbling to the surface as the guilt began to choke her. Guilt was something she was all too familiar with. It was a common thread woven through every facet of her life, from very early in her childhood. Xena licked at the sweat on the back of Ava's leg as she stood there. Ava grabbed the leash off the closet doorknob, untangling it. "You're right. Let's go for a run, girl." Some 30 minutes later, she and Xena found themselves outside of her friend Huma's home. The garage door was up, so she tiptoed through the clutter that looked like the makings of a perfectly good yard sale. Huma was the most westernized Muslim Ava had ever met. She was like the rebellious younger sister Ava never had, completely counterculture from her upbringing. Huma picked and chose her practices, much to her parents' resigned chagrin, behaving more like an American than Ava even felt at times. Ava had spent so much time abroad throughout Europe while stationed in Germany, that she most identified with the French and British way of life. Captain Stenberg would disappear off the grid when grounded via car, train, or puddle jumpers to every corner of the UK, to find the peaceful contrast to where she had most recently returned from. Stamping her passport meant more to her than having fancy things. She'd seen firsthand how quickly things can be reduced to ash, but her pictures and pleasant memories were her treasures. Vicariously, Ava would live her poor excuse for a social life by listening to stories Huma would share when she dropped by late at night, or early in the morning, depending on how you looked at it. Huma would take a cab to Ava's after closing a bar down in Shacko Bottom to finish her night there. Italian wines that would sell for hundreds of dollars in the States were shipped duty-free when she moved to Virginia. Huma would drink them like Pabst Blue Ribbons as she relayed her shenanigans to a voluntary shut-in in Ava. The door to the mudroom was ajar, and Ava heard Huma inside cussing at the potted plant she was struggling to move back into the corner from whence it came. "What's up, my bitch? Even at 33, Huma acted like a 20-something just out of college who had the house to herself while her parents were away out of town on business. Dressed in yoga pants and an off-the-shoulder sweatshirt that looked like it was stolen from the set of a Cyndi Lauper music video set, she threw her arms around Ava with a shriek of excitement. There was nothing else in her life that she'd let get away with that. There was nobody else in her life that she'd let get away with that, as crowds alone kept Ava from engaging most social scenes that had the potential for bustling. Zena followed Ava through the doorway, making a clear place of her own by the 5 pair of shoes tossed in the entryway. The two chit-chatted for a few before Uma offered her something to drink and had to take a seat. Ava told her water would be fine. Uma was mimicking walking a tightrope as she stretched her foot out to hold the refrigerator door open as she poured the chilled refreshment into a New York Yankees glass. She nearly dropped it when Ava spoke up. So, Dalton came over this morning. Shut up. You mean he came over last night and left this morning? Or he came over for, this morning? That's so hot. Ava reacted shocked and blushing, but internally thought the idea that she could be seen as cool enough for that sort of thing made her feel not so unpretty in that moment. He helped move my furniture that got shipped today, that's all. Patrick gave me that same crap. What's with you guys? What's with you? He's stupid hot, right? Did he get all sweaty in a tank top? You know who he is, right? Actually, that's partly why I came by. I know he was some kind of big-time baseball player or something, but Patrick said something about him having a wife. She freaking died on TV. It was real sad. But that means he's single. Huma, you're terrible. That's awful. So did you hook up? Huma, moving my furniture wasn't code for anything else. I just wanted to know what his story was. And without asking him. She motioned for Ava to follow her as she pulled up a creaky bar stool to the computer on a desk fashioned out of 2 old whiskey barrels. The search engine immediately produced hundreds of thousands of results on the would-be superstar. Pictures and articles, mostly pointed at the tragedy that had unfolded. Ava felt like such a social outcast with so much of pop culture due to her extended stretches of being without mainstream media. Rarely would she have time to consume more than a funny video on YouTube or a movie before falling asleep, much less know what was happening in the sports world that she had next to no interest in anyhow. Headlines pointing to the big league hopeful and the harrowing tale of his young designer wife's short push back against cancer. The web was full of Facebook pages memorializing her and immortalizing him as the storybook husband that stood by her side to the end. The Google images showed plenty of heroic-looking photos of him, and enough of him with his late wife for Ava to have seen enough. Pretty awesome, right? The choice question to break the silence left Ava mortified, looking at her friend, who stood passively dragging a cold Galaxy Diner fries through guacamole in a to-go box. No, it's not awesome. She died. No, I mean that you're together with such a great guy now. We're not together, Huma. Zena sat up at attention with the raising of their voices. The sound of her collar shook Ava from staring at her friend aghast with her juvenile antagonistic blabbering. She caught a glimpse of a piece of her glass storage containers she'd left behind a couple of visits past. The inside still had remnants of the baked custard of a veggie strata she whipped up for one of their attempts at having a girls' night movie that turned into Huma getting wasted on half a bottle of Italian rosé shipped straight from the old country. I meant to get that back to you. I'll wash it. No, it's fine. I've got it. Ava gave her friend a side hug while she rinsed the container in the sink. Zena had already made her way to the very door they came in through, leading into the garage. The return trek was just a walk, for more than the reason of carrying the fragile item back. Her hips were screaming by now. As the tightness would come in fits and spells, Ava looked forward to her appointments with Dalton more and more, but less and less for the original purpose. What she'd seen on the internet was pitiful, but he didn't want her pity, no more than she wanted anyone else's pity for all she'd been through. She found herself relating to his practice of not addressing his loss, much like she preferred not recounting any of her deployments as part of casual conversation either. Halfway to Williamsburg, Dalton charged down I-64 in his Alfa Romeo, smiling at himself as he recounted the interactions from earlier that day that he thought went well. He'd already beaten himself up enough over the way he bumbled a silly reply to something she said, or thought he'd tried too hard to sound well-read on politics or military life. For God's sakes, he had to look up 1,400 hours online to know what that meant. A glance at his speedometer indicated he was lost in thought on something he enjoyed being distracted by. The two both unknowingly found themselves thinking of the other as they fell asleep. But miles apart, they were closer than they realized. Folks, it is absolutely my pleasure to share with you my work of art, 1,300 hours. That has been chapter 4. And it's my hope that you will join us next week on Patriot Heart Radio. Hear chapter 5, and we'll dig a little deeper into what we've just covered and uncovered here in chapter 4. Again, you can find me on Facebook, search Doc Collins. You can find me on Instagram at Patriot Heart Media. I'm on Twitter at real.collins. And please send your emails to doc@patriotheartpress.com. Just 2 hours ago, on Facebook Live, I extended the opportunity for you to claim your own signed copy of 1,300 hours. There are 2 that will be reserved for those that screenshot the listening of Spreaker app, Patriot Heart Radio, and send that to my email or in the Facebook Messenger app. I'm your host, veteran, and author, Doc Collins, and you're listening to Patriot Heart Radio. See you next week.